Hi Shiva, how's it going, man?
Baby metal to you, bro.
What?
All's good. All's good. All's good. Really happy to be here. Really, I think it's my first Corona podcast, man. This is fun. Looking forward to it. Catching up with old friends and uh, friends from the scene after a long, long time.
And just so you know, I met the guys from Metal Hot last week while we were out for
Uh-huh.
drinks like biscuit and chips. And they were actually pretty excited to see you, well, on video, but they kind of miss you as well, man, especially Sean, who is, well, as you know, your biggest fan.
Sean is what keeps Xanadu running. Uh, we get lazy and then Sean will be like, "Hey, bro, when's your next gig?" And then like, you're like, "Okay, we got to play a show for Sean." And my favorite memory that I share with everyone, the only casualty I've seen in a metal gig is where I had to take Sean to a hospital after he crowd surfed at home club. Do do we want to go into this story or not?
Yes, because you know why? The fun thing about this podcast is that for some reason, every single time when the name of Shanta is being brought up, there's always a story that's being attached to him, and it's always something different. So yours is another chapter altogether. So take it away, man.
So sh- I yeah, Sean became like the craziest guy in the pit, like for Xanadu shows. And after a while, I felt that Sean is the phenomenon. Like Xanadu is playing on stage. It could be a CD or whatever, but the real thing that's happening is with Sean in the pit. That was what uh, happened after a while. Ganesh, Sean, Jarvis, all these mad fellas in the pit, and that's where the main stuff was happening. And we had a sideshow. Like the crowd was the main thing. And then there was a home club gig. Maybe I think I'd say about 4 years ago, 5 years ago, and I think we're playing after 1 year or some ridiculously long time, and everyone was psyched and excited. And then I think it was This Song Is Shit. I think we have it on camera somewhere. And Sean does a kind of a stage dive. That was a day for stage diving. Everyone was stage diving. And Sean did a stage dive of the stage, and he kind of did like a side thing. Like people kind of caught him, and then he kind of did a side thing, and the stairs for home club, and he hit his head against the stairs, and he started. I think it was like 4 5 stitches. So Sean, make sure you can correct me here. Might be 6 stitches almost. And he was outside drinking his pain away. And then after the show, I was like, Sean, fuck this, man. I'm bringing you to the hospital. So so that was like the old, like people ask me, like, hey, mosh pits, does it get aggressive? What's the worst you have seen? So Sean is the only mosh pit casualty I've seen, and it was just unfortunate. No, just pure excitement and pure energy, no other cause of it. And luckily, it was handled very, very easily. Tan Tok Sing, there was not much going on at that point of the night. So it was a good day out. Like, it was a good day. I think when they did like a blood test on Sean, I don't know whether his alcohol level was a bit high. Like, they were a bit concerned about that. but it was still a memorable, still a good story.
I would say that maybe they will be more surprised with the fact that Sean actually has blood in his system than as opposed to alcohol, man.
True story, true story. Literally, I think that can be said about half the metal scene.
So like the thing is Sean, like sometimes like when I go for shows with him, I'll like look him in the eye and I just ask myself like, what's gonna happen today? What will Sean do today? Will this result in an injury? Will this result in him crying? Will this result in him doing something like I do not know, man. It's like choose your own adventure with Sean Tan, and unfortunately, you don't get to choose the ending because he's the one that does the answers.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that's the great thing about the scene. Like, there are no, like the crowd makes up the scene, lah. Like, something I've noticed, like Singapore can have a lot of great bands, um, but you can have all the talent, you can have all the performers and bands, but until you have like organizers, I think one thing that we don't give enough credit to is organizers. Um, people like Street Noise. There was a time when Jarvis and Ganesh showed up after like Gas House closed down, and then the scene kept going because of that. But uh, we, it's not just the performers; it's everyone else who's involved in the scene that just keeps the scene going. And I think that's very very important to note. Like what Street Noise has been doing the last few years. Oh my God, does it's just amazing work that they're doing for the street scene. And even people like I want to do a shout out to like all the photographers. Like I'm just hit banging on stage and just doing stupid shit, and then people like Donald Poe or people like Steven Chu come around and make like something that's in person is purely retarded looks so good on picture. The entire scene just comes alive, and all these different talents organically just coming together is really really amazing. And you can't have one without the other. You can have all the great bands, but if we don't have this like scene, we don't have the organizers, we don't have the photographers putting in all the effort. Boplay, another great guy who's like doing so much work, recording gigs and all that. It won't be worth much. So these, I think a big shout out to all these people as well in the scene.
I completely agree with you, and I feel that aside from the bands and the fans as well, like these guys are the unseen heroes, and
Mm-hmm,
especially when we are a teenager, when we discover music for the first time, it's not just about the musicians, it is not
mm-hmm,
just about the live videos that we see, but also things like photos of them backstage, for example.
mm-hmm,
Like I remember,
mm-hmm,
like flipping through magazines like Kerrang or Metal Hammer, and you see photos of like James Hetfield just hanging out backstage, or guys
mm-hmm,
like from Anthrax just chilling out, and these moments are spontaneous and they're captured at the right time by photographers and the
mm-hmm,
like. And these are the guys I like to refer them as like the archivers. So these are the guys that will ensure that a part of history is being retained
mm-hmm,
as well.
mm-hmm,
That goes along with it. And you're right, I have nothing but respect for guys like Donald or Steven or even Gary from Ballplay
mm-hmm,
photos. And if as the audience goer, sometimes like when I look at them doing their job, it's a fair bit of risk as well because they're going, right in front, or they're just in the middle of the crowd and everything. And sometimes
mm-hmm,
like with the crowd,
mm-hmm,
you can't blame them. They're in the heat of the moment, they're having fun, they are showcasing their passion. But for these guys who are doing the photography and everything, it is like trying to get the right shot and trying to get away unscathed as well.
yeah. I mean, I've done it so many times to Donald because he's light, and I just end up carrying him or whatever, and I can see him fearing for his life while he's crowd surfing and like taking pictures with his expensive DSLR. But um, but yeah, that's definitely the case, lah. Yeah, and not enough credit goes to these guys. And I just want to say that there was a um, I'm feeling a bit like nostalgic now, but I don't know if you remember like Adam from Global Chaos. Like he was one of the old scene guys. He passed away maybe about 4 years ago, and
About 2013,
he
2014
actually had,
thereabouts.
yeah, and he passed me. We were trying to work on this like documentary or kind of thing for the local metal scene, and he passed me like this thick stack of stuff uh, about like the metal scene in Singapore, and it's just so interesting to like go through it, because this guy has been keeping stuff from like the 1980s, and he has like all the signs where you have the signs where like if you have long hair you're not allowed in the post office. If you have long hair at the bank they'll serve you the last. um, he has letters from Chuck Schuldiner, Max Cavalera, all these. He has kept it over the years. And, the archiving thing, it was just so nice to see. It really gives you a sense of and he just passed it to me. And I still have it to this day. Hopefully, like someday when I have the money and time or I'm retired, I might work on it. But getting that sense of the scene that there's a continuity, that's very, very nice to see. Even for us, like thrash metal, like we always wondered when the new guys came in, uh, you know, like uh, a lot of the guys who got into thrash metal later on, we were like, this is really amazing, because who knew that thrash metal could make a comeback? Who knew that, you know, people will be interested in it? It's like something from the 90s or 80s, and to see people come back and like get into it, I mean, especially in the newer generation, it's really really cool. So there is a cycle in the scene that is very nice to see lah.
And speaking of which, like I would say with the advent of like thrash metal, it's a nice revival because when you had your 80s, your 90s, that was when thrash metal was at its peak, and then you had the grunge movement and then nu metal, and then metalcore and a few other genres. But then at some point, like thrash metal just comes back right up again. It's like a resurgence of sorts. And in your point of view, like why do you feel that that is the case, especially for people around our generation? Because I came from like that bunch of people who were teenagers when metalcore was the in thing. But for some reason, somehow when we become adults or young adults, it was still the thrash metal, extreme metal that still ruled the roost.
What do you mean? Thrash metal, extreme metal that rule the.
Yeah, as in as teenagers, we were exposed to
Mm-hmm.
bands like what Avenged Sevenfold or Trio and the
Mm-hmm.
like. But eventually, these are the bands that we kind of listened to for a
Mm-hmm.
while. But
Mm-hmm.
as we grew older, bands like
Mm-hmm.
Metallica, Megadeth, Anthrax, and the like are the ones that made a big imprint in us, and it kind of also influenced like the kind of music that we listen to in the long run, even today.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
so in your point of view, when it comes to thrash metal music, what makes it so significant to people to the point where it is still being upheld in terms of their listening preferences?
Mm. Okay, so my kind of theory is that every genre has a emotion attached to it, like a theme and an emotion attached to it. And for example, you will never have black metal, party black metal. Like party black metal just it just doesn't work. You will never have like glam death metal, uh, where it's all about groupies and chicks and all that sort of things, right? And it's very hard to have like um, like the type of things that Meshuggah and all these like bands write about in terms of like a sci-fi philosophical idea, like what Gojira writes about. I don't think we've really had that very successfully with like thrash metal and heavy metal. So there's something inherent in the music that gives it like that emotion which has themes related to it. And I think the thing that I've learned a lot through thrash metal, and I think the main songwriting influence in Xanadu has been like Zac and Maisha, and they're just like really lepak fellas, like like Rich Seeker, hanging out with like Brandon and all the other guys. It's just relax, just have fun, enjoy, and so that sort of emotion you want it after a while, right? There's just nothing quite like that. There's nothing like municipal waste in the world, right? There's no party, no matter how much money you have, right? No matter if you have billions of dollars, like the Jolo, um, 1MDB guy, right? No party is as good as a municipal waste party. I can guarantee you that much, right? or no groupie is as good as like or glam metal bands, like orgies or groupies or whatever. So I think there's the emotion with thrash metal that keeps it ever young. People will keep coming back to it, and so this way it can always coexist, and you always see this flux in different types of metal. And you will see, like, for example, with the new age metal bands like Havoc and uh, some of the names escape me now. They have gotten the polished sound very very well, and the drummers are bringing a lot of technical depth drumming, so really fast, really clean, really technical kind of drumming, which it has given a new lease of life to thrash metal. So you'll always see a different type of reinvention, I think, over the years and over the times.
But obviously, speaking in the local context as well, like now that you brought up like some of these bands, such as like Witch Seeker, for example, like I remember at some point, I would say maybe like in the 2010s or so, like Xanadoo was like one of the few bands that were emerging, and people were just like into you guys like hot potato, like okay, like short aside. But I would say like, for example, when Xanadoo is being built to perform at a show, immediately you are guaranteed an audience because people want to head down to watch Xanadoo. But what I really want to know is the origin story behind Xanadoo. Like, how did it come about, and how do you guys like got your first show as well?
So Xanadu started, our founding members are Zac and Manesha, and they were in the same, they've been playing music since they were 13 or 14. And so they were playing music first. And it's quite funny. A few friends, like Cliff Jaded from Bloodstone, have called us bourgeois metal. Because we're all from like, we want to be thrash metal and all that, but actually from Victoria VJC, all a bit bourgeois metal. So, so, uh, so they started playing, and then we were all in school together, and I was listening metal on the side. Like you mentioned, you start off with the new metal thing back in the day. That time I was really into Fear Factory. Yeah. Fear Factory was the shit.
I agree. Yeah.
And so then they were jamming with a bunch of other guys, and they were doing quite a few gigs. They had like one or two demos made at home, and then I never thought I could play an instrument, and I just started dabbling in it. Our brother band Bloodstone, they were in Victoria as well. Mikey is like 2 years our senior. So there was kind of a scene going on, and you see all these people playing instruments, and so amazing and so cool. Like honestly, they're like, if you once you see someone master something and you see it in person, there's really nothing like that, nothing as inspiring as that, right? So you want to get into it. So then I was like, okay, let me try it out. And I honestly, like, I don't have a natural talent for it. Like, if you are not musically inclined, I probably started a bit late. And Maisha and Zac were looking for a bassist, so I joined, and that was around the time of the Gas House days. And we tried to be a 4-piece kind of Metallica-ish, Megadeth-ish kind of band for a while. And then the more band members you have, the harder coordination gets in terms of recording, in terms of jamming, and all that. And so you have to do a balance out with whether it's actually value adding to your sound. And after a while, we kind of realized that, we can get enough energy in a live show by just being a 3-piece band. You can get enough things going on and happening by just being a 3-piece band. So I think kind of the decision to be a 3-piece band, there used to be the IG studios at one point in time, kind of happened around then. And then we started putting out demos properly. And we did like 2-3 demos. There's metal. Oh shit, I'm gonna get screwed for this because I can't remember the discography. There was this demo is shit, and then after that the first full length came out, Black Death Grind Shit. And after that the first European tour happened. And it's so weird to think about it now that we were touring France at the same time as Wormrod, because now like we were literally going to the same places that Wormrod was going like 2 weeks later. We were just missing each other by 2 weeks. Like even that goat that Wormrod has had in some of their shows, we played in the exact same venue in the cellar. And at least they had a goat lah. Sometimes we played a show there and there's like 1 or 2 people. So
you're talking about the iconic goat that has made like social media waves and stuff, right?
Yeah. what's the, we need to figure out what's the goat called, the wormrot goat, you know. Oh man. I can't remember the guy's name, but then the guy has that goat has the metal goat has he has a own Facebook page and all that. So uh, yeah, I mean, I got to meet the goat, but okay, the grind goat. Sorry, I just had to do this. The grind goat. And at least I got to meet the fella, but he wasn't into us. He didn't really like our Xanadu that much. He was a grind, he's more of a grindcore kind of goat. And so yeah, I think once the tour
We thought
happened,
you guys were too bourgeois enough.
yeah, you know, I could smell it a mile away, you know, all these middle class Singaporeans, all workers' party for no reason. So, uh, so yeah, and then after that, I think so that was actually a good period for us. I think there's NS going on for us, and it gave us a lot of time, you know, on the weekends to jam and all that. Have a couple of tours during university, and then Zach moved away to Canada to study, and then he will come back every year for one show, and then we'll have a big reunion show where a lot of people would come, and that was nice. But you know, like last time I used to wonder, like, you know, the older metalheads, like, you know, what's going on? You know, how come you kind of start tapping out of the scene a bit? Um, but you know, now that we have graduated, working, married, you know, starting hard, you know, really tough careers and all that. The energy is not there. The energy, the creative energy you kind of have between like 18 and 25, it's very hard to replicate throughout in your life. Which is why, like, you know, bands like Rudra, you know, who are still going after like 25 years consistently every 2 years putting out an album is really like, wow, Shiva, man. Can I swear on this? I can swear on this, right?
Yeah,
Shiva.
you can. Yeah, you can.
Real
Do not worry,
respect.
man. Do not
That
worry,
is,
man. This show is not funded by like the national whatever council of the arts, so it's fine.
yeah. So like those guys are really respect doing metal for like 20, 25 years with at least just one or two lineup changes. That is consistency, and that's you don't even see that in international bands a lot. So credit is due where it's due. So yeah, that is kind of the Xanadu story at the moment. And our last release, the last demo that we had was it was good. It was pretty well received. It was quite fast, but we try to put out something in a while. I think Corona has brought us back home and brought us back to writing a bit more music. So let's see how that goes.
You know, it's kind of crazy, like how like COVID-19 has kind of like caused like most of us to be mostly domesticated or pretty much homebound.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it kind of helps like with our creative juices as well. Like I'll be honest with
Mm-hmm.
you, if it wasn't for COVID-19, I would not be doing this as well, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
thankfully through this, like I was able to just sit down and think about ideas and such. And this is something that you are able to do while you're out working or when you're out traveling because you're doing something else. But now you're at home,
Mm-hmm.
you're like, oh, you know, let's do something interesting and all. And that's where all the creative juices start coming in and such. So is Zac and Manesha like are they still based abroad or are they back in Singapore?
So Maisha's back in Singapore. Zach is still in Canada. He has quite a few side bands. So he's playing in a band called Skumstrike. Yeah, he's doing a lot of crazy things in Canada. I think he's the most active musically out of the rest of us. I've done a death metal project a couple of years ago just to try out my hand at playing guitar called Disciple. If anyone wants a copy, let me know. Uh, yeah, and that's about it. And then we had the demo from Xanadu. And yeah, apart that, you know, very quiet. I think one of the things in Singapore, so you know, people usually think about Singapore, like, why don't we come up with great art sometimes, right? And I think we are also like a victim of our success, like how cosmopolitan Singapore is, how there's always like something to do, right? I think for art, sometimes you need like the isolation. I can't remember who it was, but like they said that the biggest obstacle to creativity is distraction. And Singapore has so much distraction with it all the time. And think that also is a major factor in Singapore, right? Because you can always message someone, you can go hang out for tea, there's a million things you could do in Singapore, but sometimes all you need to do is just sit down and write. And a lot of times when you see all these great, like, Sweden and Finland are prime examples, there's literally nothing to do for 6 months. So you just stay at home and you work on music, or you listen to metal, and you create a great piece of work. Or if you think about the start of metal with, Liverpool and Birmingham and all these places, right? These were shitholes essentially, and then that's where Black Sabbath came from, because it was just so despondent. There's not much going on, and then people made music out of it. So that is also a thing about that works against us in Singapore. That there's so high energy, there's so much stuff to do, and that gets into the process of creativity a bit lah. Which I think COVID has taught Singaporeans to go back to the basics a bit. Just enjoy your own company, spend time at home, be creative in your own space. So I think you're right in that sense, that the isolation helps a bit.
I would say so as well. And it's just basically like what I would call like a reset button for everyone, because most of the time, especially when we are adults and everything, like we have to worry about, for example, like work matters and then things outside of that and everything, and we are always like I would call it like, our brains are basically like computers, but there are like so many apps like running at the same time that you cannot focus on one thing because everything is running concurrently. But now when you do like the forced restart, you are able to at least have time to yourself and work on things in every step of the way. And I would say like some of these bands in Singapore as well, like for example, like Opposition Party, like they've been coming up with their own video series. Even Wormrod has done a couple of live streams together and stuff. And it's really nice to see that some of our local talents are using this opportunity to come up with material that may not necessarily be music, but at least it allows them to maintain their relevance in terms of like the view of the public. And that being said, when it comes to getting attention, especially with like social media, like there's gotta be like 1,001 bands trying to hawk their music and whatnot, but more often than not, like the percentage that they get is always very minimal. But on the other hand, when I think about Xanadoo, for example, more often than not, whenever like you guys have a show, like you may not even be the ones advertising it, but if let's say the promoter just has your name on the flyer, for example, people are saying, yeah, let's go. We're gonna go for a Xanadoo show. So as a member of the band itself, like what's your reaction seeing a lot of people like turning up for your shows just because they want to watch you guys perform? Like, is this something that you always envision it to be, or does this come as a shock to you?
Okay, so I mean there are two schools of thought to this, right? Okay, it comes down to like, do you build do you focus on the craft, and then after a while, like the kind of the crowd will follow, or do you like have to do both, right? That's kind of the idea sometimes you have to do. And it's tough to do both. That's why you have like record labels, because like the whole promotion and business part of it is actually very, very tough. Like you have to talk to people, you have to make friends, you have to, and that is completely the outgoing part of doing music is completely different to just sitting down and making music. Like it's totally not the same thing. And people who have been great musicians in the past are actually sometimes very introverted, and they don't like the limelight, and they are very, very bad interviewers. So I think that part of it is very, very hard to balance as a musician. And I think for Xanadu, it works out well because each of us have different personalities, so we work in a different space. Where I'm better at meeting people, talking to people face to face. Mahisha's a fantastic, manager of sorts, where he handles like all the back end. And Zac always makes it a point to do trades, to reach out to people in new cities and talk to people all the time about music. So and so each of this has led to outreach, for example, right? And I guess we've been doing it 10, 15 years. So it's nice to see the kind of hard work pay off. But you should never be in a position where you you are expecting like a big crowd and no one shows up. It's always nice to have your expectations low and not have a lot of people show up. Uh, I think there's a quote or something that goes like never be the one asking for, like never be the one asking for a statue to be built for you, but always be the person rejecting statues built for you. So I think in the metal scene we are very, very good at the latter, while in the mainstream media it's a lot about the former, where it's like try to get as much attention on yourself all the time as you can, right? No matter what sort of scandal you can do to get the attention. um, I suppose the question for the metal scene is to think about is how cult and how Krieg, like, and how underground you want to get. Like sometimes also there's a thing that, oh, this is so limited edition and I only got 10 tapes and like, wow, only like 15 people in the world are going to listen to it and that's so cult. And how will the scene sustain itself, right? That's the question. Like I think one show that I went to that I was very, very sad about was like the Benighted show, right? French band, they were playing on a Tuesday evening, fantastic. And there's like 15 people turned up. And I think it was Street Noise that did it. And I just felt so bad. Like I basically bought all the merchandise I could. I think I bought one extra ticket just to help out, but there's also that question that comes about like, how which end do you want to be, right? There's a middle point that most bands have to be comfortable at, and I think most bands in Singapore are actually very good at this. Like no one's really hogging the limelight and hogging all the limelight unduly, right? I mean, if you talk about Wormrod, like Jesus, the kind of Vijay puts out his like just weekly drumming sessions. Oh my god, what a fucking monster, man! Like that sort of publicity is always good, and you see like people from all over the world watching this Singaporean kid like just blast the shit out of his drums. Uh, that's really nice to see. So I mean, my concern is that like how will Xanadu have the lasting effect of someone like Opposition Party or Rudra or Impiety? Like, okay, we are great now because of we are lucky to have a few guys like Sean, you guys who know us, right, who are putting the word out there for us. But 10 years time, will any kids still know us? Or will we be the Apik and right? Like, so slow. What this song is shit. What nonsense. So you will never know lah. Yeah?
I think this kid's
Is
probably
right?
complaining like these guys are not even working class. They don't represent us.
Yeah. Something like that, right? Like, maybe I can't keep a certain haircut. And like that matter lah. Or I'm very unsophisticated in bass, so I set up in like 5 minutes. I done all my tuning or what. Then I'm playing like stupid tunes that you guys are guessing. Then maybe in the future, maybe like, why is this guy playing? How come not in C? How come these guys still playing standard tuning? What nonsense, So you never know how it goes.
But that's like the beauty of like a generational shift, to be honest. Like this is something that myself and like the rest of the Metal Hot guys, like we discuss all the time, and we observe that, like the older generation, like how some of them seem to be a little more embittered and they tend to be very close-minded and everything. Whereas like people of our generation tend to be more open-minded and approachable, so to speak. So it's really hard to say like what the next generation of music goers are gonna be like. Are they gonna be equally receptive? Are they gonna be as open-minded, or are they just gonna be very critical of whatever they hear and just think that it is outdated because they are so accustomed to Western influences that when they come to a local show, they start having this like gauge of what it should be like. But when you do mention about like Wormrod and Rudra, like this is my final question as well. Like these guys, you know, they have gone to perform overseas, and so has Xanadu as well, and also in Piety, to a large extent. And the awesome thing is that, you know, when I go to Europe, for example, and I tell them that I'm from Singapore, and if it happens to be like a metalhead, they'll be telling like bands from our country, and I think that's really awesome. You know, like there'll be black metal guys saying that, oh yeah, you know, that's you guys have Impiety. Oh yeah, you guys have like Wormrod. In fact, like when I went to Australia, there was a guy. Shout out to Mitch if you're listening to this. He wore like a Wormrod shirt on the first day I met him, and I was just like,
Uh,
motherfucker. Like that's so cool, you know. Like, can you imagine back then, like when you tell people you're from Singapore and you are into rock and metal music, no one could think of a band name that comes from your country. They'll be like, okay, but you guys even listen to rock and metal? But now when when you say that I'm from Singapore, they'll be like, oh yeah, you got this band, you got this band, you got that band. And you know, in fairness, I would say Xanadu has that effect as well, because you guys have been doing shows in Europe and put Singapore on the map, so to speak. So my
uh,
yeah.
I mean, with Wormrod, definitely we've had the effect. Like, I mean, I've asked, this is damn funny. Like, I think before we went on our second tour, like we asked some, you know, people like, hey, what do you want from Singapore? And, you know, like usually I just get people like Kaya, you know, like that's the most like kind of Singaporean thing that you have that is not too heavy, not too expensive, that you can bring. And then it's like still a cultural product. And then like I asked them like, hey, what do you all want? And then now people say like, you know, get me a Wormrod LP. And I I remember it was like after the second show at Basket, Arif didn't even have like LPs left and t-shirts, and I was like, this my our tour manager asked for like one thing, like a Wormrod LP and t-shirt, and we couldn't even get him like the t-shirt. You know, I had to like
Oh
scrounge in
boy.
so many different, like so malus, yeah. But that's like a good problem to have, right? Um, I think Wormrod in that sense has been really phenomenal. Rudra's impact on the Indian subcontinent is like, or is something we will not see for the next 30, 40 years. Like, I mean, Carter is focus is on Rotting Christ's vocals, right? Like he's helping Rotting Christ out with their albums and doing like vocal tracks for them. That's for a Singaporean brand. Like think of the massive impact. Then you go and read the YouTube comment. Like everyone's like, bro, who is this guy? You know, he's from a Singaporean brand, Rudra. Wow, I just checked Rudra out. This is fantastic. And then they have kind of spun out a whole genre of Indian kids in India who did not fucking know that, look, I can express my identity in a modern format that is cool, right? Like, I mean, if you think about being Indian, you look at all the forums in the world, right? Like, in the past few years, it's been Indian men are rapists. Like that's kind of the general idea and tradition. And you know, for something like Rudra to come out and have like a lasting global impact in that sense, like Vedic metal, like so many bands, uh, like 6 years ago, no one wanted to be Vedic metal. Now you type Vedic metal on the playlists on YouTube that come out, on Spotify that come out, is so crazy. And some of the production value of these bands is like, is oh my god, they're phenomenal. Like these guys are studying music in Berkeley and all that. It's really really good. So Rudra is something we will not see. We will not understand the real impact that Rudra has for a long time. I know Katir told me his story once, and he's, you know, the old timers are a bit shy, but he 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 was, I think, on a European tour or American tour, and this guy came up to him with like obscure text that he wrote one of these songs about, and it was maybe 2,600 years old text. It's about this stick in Sanskrit, and this is a white guy coming to him. He's like, bro, I was inspired by one of your songs, and it began a journey for me. And after, like, I'm doing my thesis on this text, and this guy was just like, what the fuck? I've never. I mean, obviously, Katir, I think, don't think he swears, but he just never
No.
thought of it that way, right? So, so I think that's going to be definitely an outsized impact. Um, another band that in recent times Mike or Mia have kind of moved to Cambodia, but Absence of the Sacred was a big name at one point as well. People would listen to their stuff in the MySpace days, and you see someone like Absence of the Sacred play live. Oh my God, fantastic! Um, so that is definitely that. And regarding the points about now, okay, whether we can still sustain this in the future with all the stuff that's coming out of Malaysia and Indonesia or Vietnam is something to be seen. That is not, may or may not be the case.
Even Thailand
Um,
as well, especially Thailand, because
yeah,
they have a
yeah,
very vibrant metal scene.
yeah. I mean, the guys at Bangkok Trash, like, every one of them used to put up albums or demos out every year, every 2 years. Um, so whether Singapore can still keep that thing going, it's something that remains to be seen. I mean, um, yeah, let's see about that. Uh, the other thing about the old versus the new, and I think this is more of just like a biological thing. It's a very well-known fact that as you're younger, you have like fluid intelligence, and then as you get older, your intelligence becomes and like focused in a sense. And so, I mean, they've done some research on this, and basically, you will not like new music after you're 32 years old. Like, it's very hard to find a new piece of music that resonates in the same way after you're a certain age. So, in this sense, credit has to be given to people, the older generation, who can connect with younger music. Um, I mean, someone like this was Yahudi, right? He's a guy on our scene, like crazy fella, still turning up for shows, crowd surfing, and he would still listen to our music, right? And that's not very natural. Yeah, so it's actually, we should understand that it's natural that people do not like, the older crowd will not like the younger music in a sense. And when we have older people who can get into younger music, we have to appreciate that a lot more. So that is something that is really uh, amazing, right? Even for people like you mentioned, Stomping Ground, the ability to keep going after all these years, that has to be appreciated. But I think young people just should. I mean, the younger band shouldn't take it too hard. Like I remember Ayong listened to Xanadu over my shitty earphones at one point in time. We were having Teh Tarik, and he was like, "Bro, sorry, I don't mind, but I think you're not very good. Production can improve this. You just take it as important criticism from someone in the future, and uh, see how you can improve it, right? We still should see ourselves as uh, a continuing trip. I think one thing cool about the scene is that we should not see ourselves as the scene is just this people, but a scene is like kind of a group of people over time, right? And you think about like the Majula Singapura rendition last year. Uh, you know, 30 years ago he was considered like an outcast. He will not be allowed in post offices with long hair, right? And for him to have Majula Singapura, which still caused so much controversy, we will benefit from it. So yeah, it's a continuation. It's a continuation that we will see. I think one thing that will be interesting for Singapore going into the future is how much music can be used to push social conversations. I think Watain, the whole banning of Watain last year, kind of brought that to the forefront. And I wonder how much we will be able to do that as a metal scene in the future. I think I'm thinking about.
But I will say as well, like, in terms of like rock and metal in Singapore, we have had a lasting legacy. I mean, we speak about the guy who sang like the national anthem last year, Ramit Sarip, like back in the 60s, back in the 70s, man. Like back then, no one's gonna bat an eyelid at him. But it's guys like him who laid the foundations for rock and metal music in Singapore. And it's so amazing, like it's become a generational thing where like you even have like parents, you even have like grandparents who listen to that kind of music, and then the people after them are listening to the same kind of music, and something's gonna happen in the long run. I mean, if you look at trends, for example, like let's take okay, let's take K-pop for example. Like this is not something that's gonna last forever. It has a finite shelf life. I'll be honest with you, but
Mhm.
rock and metal music, it is not just the music. It is a connection between people,
Mhm.
and it brings everyone together. Like the themes, the musical arrangements, and other things that you just cannot explain. Um, yeah. So I mean that being said, you know, like when you mentioned about how Adam gave you like the dossier of like information with regards to like rock
Mhm.
and metal music over the years, it's material like that that will contribute towards the history of our music in our country. Like yes,
Mhm.
we may not be like Malaysia, Indonesia, because we are still small, but yet we are just as passionate, so to speak. So honestly, when that actually materializes, where you are able to push forth with the project in mind, I would
Mm.
say that it's definitely going to gain a lot of traction. And also at the same time, you know, there's got to be a lot of people from our community that will step forward and provide their viewpoints and perceptions as well. And this is
Mhm.
something that needs to be treasured because it is our history, you know. It is something that is made in Singapore, so to speak. It is not manufactured elsewhere. We did not import our scene from another country. This is something that we took as a form of expression and we made into our own. And as a result, we have had bands over the years that not only had like for example like Rudra, they had Vedic metal, which is a combination of like traditional Hinduism ideologies as well with like metal music, as well as yeah, like guys behind the scenes as well, like that we promoting our local music, so to speak. So I mean, but with that said, before I end the whole conversation, I know that you're based in Europe right now, and you're gonna head back soon, of course, at some point. But touch your heart and ask yourself, what makes you truly Singaporean?
So okay, here's what was really interesting um about being in Singapore. I think we are a people that know a lot more about the world than other people know about the world. Um, like once you are born and bred in Singapore, the amount you know about the world is honestly astounding. It's like even with the internet, like the rest of the world is actually so ignorant. It's really remarkable. It's really really remarkable. That's the most amazing thing, and it's by default because we are so small. You have to really know so much about everyone else to have an edge over them, right? um, Let me give you an example. I spoke to a Moroccan friend, and I was like, uh, so first, like, oh, you are Indian. Okay, and I'm like, yeah, I'm Indian. You're from India? No, from Singapore. Okay, like, explain. And now at least they get the immigration story because Europe has immigration, so they get, okay, not I'm Indian and I'm born in Singapore, and I still hold on to my roots, and but Singapore is home, right? Um, and then they were like, so you are Muslim? And I'm like, no, India's not Muslim. And even Singapore is not Muslim. There's Chinese and all that. Okay, fine. Oh, yeah, I was saying that means India is Buddhist. Like, like like it's 1 billion of the world's population, right? It's like it's 16%, 20% of the world's population. Like, how come you don't get like this fact right? Like come on lah, they like and then I had to explain like everything to them. I mean, the nice thing about the world today is that people realize they're ignorant and they're trying to change it, but really they know so little about the world that as Singaporeans we know a lot, right? We know a lot more about the world than they do. Talk about, like, if you want to talk about in Asia, the kind of ignorance that people from the bigger countries have about the world, right? Uh, if you talk to let's say, Indian person or a Malaysian person, they will not know about kind of the shared uh, medieval pre-Arab, pre-Islamic history that might exist. They'll go like, what? There's a Vijayanagar Empire? What? You know, oh, this word Malacca, you know, all these Sanskrit words, where are they coming from? There's a connection? What does this mean, right? They don't know all this. Like, I mean, some people might think, oh, you know, even so, we as Singaporeans know a lot more about the world than other people know about the world, and that's something I've really thought that is very, very critical and crucial. Even if we, you know, we talk about like the, you know, we like to, this word that's been thrown around like Chinese privilege and blah 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 and all that. I mean, we can make fun of the majority to a certain extent, but honestly, of the world that I've traveled, being 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 a minority in Singapore beats the shit out of being like a minority anywhere else. For many many different cases, and even the average of the world and everyone else. You know, some people won't even know that there are 10 different religions in the world. Some people may not even know the languages that are spoken in the world. And I think it's that knowledge of the world that you know keeps us a lot more. I think it makes us special. I think that is something that, and I don't think you can replicate that. I don't think you can consciously tell people, hey, you got to know a lot more about the world. It's just because we have to survive. We are so small. There's only so much about Singapore you can know and improve that you have to know about the world. And I think that is really key and important. Like if you told a European person, right, like make some African food, the person will struggle. But now if I tell you, hey, go make me some biryani, you wouldn't struggle to make biryani, right? Like, it's just, and this type of information that we have around the world is not natural, you know. Like and this is like I made noodles for like some of my Chinese and Hong Kong friends, and it was pretty good. And they were like, "Hey, your noodles are better than mine." And I was just like, "How is that possible?" But it is, you know. So I think that is something we take for granted a lot, and we don't actually see that until we travel the rest of the world. So, so that's something, yeah.
You know, speaking of noodles, I actually had this conversation with my girlfriend because she went to the supermarket and she came across something called Singapore noodles, and she asked me what Singapore
Uh-huh.
noodles is. And you know what? You're kind of right, because as a Singaporean, I was able to explain to her why, one, that is not exactly the case, and secondly, I could even tell her why is it probably called Singapore noodles, because of some sort of confusion with another country and such.
Mhm.
And I think this is the beauty about being a Singaporean, in the sense that we are so attuned with everything else that happens in the world. Like even if it be Malaysia or even when we go to Europe, like we know about people's backgrounds and how migration works and whatnot. Because more often than not, like people from our family, be it our grandparents or our parents or great grandparents, they all come from another country and they all ended up in Singapore at some point. And that's how we learn about history, not just
Mhm.
a in the global sense of the word, but also our own family history. And we learn
Mhm.
to connect the dots, so to speak.
Mhm.
And that's
Yeah,
also why
yeah,
like
yeah.
you have like friends who are like, for example, like you have your Indian Muslims, you have your Arabs and everything. And to you, like when you hear their background, you're not even betting an eyelid, because you're like, yeah, that's possible, because we had
Mhm.
people from those countries come to our country. So that's how it works. But again, like I think especially like with the Western countries, sometimes like it is a very mind-blowing fact. More so when you speak to them in English and they tell you, you sound pretty good in English. And you're like, yeah, it's my first language. We learned that in
Yeah,
school.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't want to just hantam the West for it, but I think it's any big country lah. You just cannot avoid, you know, being like being stuck in your own pond. Lah. So, you know, if you go to like uh, Malaysia and tell them the fact that, you know, you guys were actually your whole process of becoming Muslim became because of a Chinese eunuch who came from China called Zheng He, and they wanted to split up Vijayanagara, and then they converted the Prince of Malacca. And then now you tell all these white dot movement people or these like Puritan movements people that, you know, you can thank your entire new culture because of a gay Chinese guy. Like how insulted would they be? Yeah? Like,
Man, they'll start like, I don't know, man, spamming like Twitter with like death threats and everything. I mean, that's what I see. Like the moment you tell us something that deviates away from what they know, it just it's just like a mind-blowing revelation to them, which they find it really hard to
yeah.
swallow.
Yeah. So I think there are some advantages of being the small guy, in this sense. Um, yeah, and we will always that will be a lot more impressive about us as a and so like last time I used to struggle with this a lot in the sense that like why don't we have like a Singaporean culture and like Singaporean thing and all that, but I've come to realize it's a representation of the world, so whatever happens in Singapore is a microcosm of what's happening in the world, right? So essentially we are to quote Michael Jackson, we are the world, like, in sense. And no other country can claim that, and it frustrates them to no end, right? Like if Europe wants to claim they are the world, they're like, my lah. You all got you cannot be it. You have your own culture, you have your own history, blah blah blah. US wants to claim that, you can't do it. India, China, Indonesia want to claim that, you can't do it. Brazil wants to claim that, can't do it. Singapore, because you're so small, we can claim that. So
And
I think
that's
what makes us very special.
and you know what? That's a very, very eloquent way to end this conversation, man. That was like beautiful. That's beautifully put, man. I think I'm gonna like probably sleep over this tonight and think about it as well.
Thanks, bro. Thanks. You bring out the best in me, lah.
Oh man, guys, don't praise me, man. I get really shy when it comes to praises, but you know what, dude? Thank you so much for having this chat. Like, I really appreciate the fact that you took the time to step away from the mountains and talk to me for this past hour.
No, bro. No, anytime. And thank you so much for arranging this. And uh, appreciate you doing this for the scene. Hopefully, I've spoken about all the people that have played a part in the scene. And for any mistakes in facts or whatever, Google's your best friend. I apologize it in foresight. Proactively. I apologize for that proactively, and for anyone that have offended, fuck off. So
And if you love him or you hate him, just listen to Xanadoo, man, because you can never go wrong with that.
thanks, bro. Thanks.
I mean, I'm no Sean. I'm not the mascot for Xanadu, but I try my best to plug your bands, man.
Cool. And look up. If you guys are interested, get in touch with Zac. He has Skumstrike and a few other projects on the side, I think a bit more grunge, punkish crossover kind of things. And I've Disciple, death metal side project. If anyone wants copies, get in touch with us. Let us know. Drop us a message on the Xanadu Facebook. I think Facebook is getting a bit stressed with Xanadu because you're not posting much on it.
It's
We
okay.
should do the.
What I'm gonna do is that at the end of the show, I'm also gonna put like some links below so that they can actually check out the bands as well.
Cool. Thanks, man.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Hey, no worries, man. You know what? I'll see you soon when you head back to Singapore.
See you very soon.
Cheers.
Take care, brother. Bye-bye.
Bye.